Welcome to Customer Driven with Chad McDaniel. Well known throughout the customer leadership industry, Chad has been the chief community leader for Execs in the Know, one of the top executive customer advocacy groups on the planet. With a passion for customer success and a desire to share and develop best practices, Chad's conversations with industry leaders aim to give unfiltered, unplugged access to industry peers who are customer obsessed, just like you. If you enjoy the show, please be sure to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Now here's your host, Chad McDaniel.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Chad McDaniel with Execs in the Know, and absolutely a pleasure to have your listenership here today. I greatly appreciate it. And, I've been so blessed over the years with some tremendous community leaders and execs in the know, and what our advocacy continues to be to the industry. It's just been absolutely amazing. The amount of customer leadership and great things that are happening across our industry, and just everyone continuing towards their drive and success, of customer success, I should say. And if you're not involved with Execs in the Know, we're a very active customer leadership community. I'd encourage you to go execsintheknow.com. We're not an association. We're not a paid for membership, but just a tremendous group of customer executives wanting to get together and share best practices and insights, everything customer. But it is an absolute pleasure to kick off this new series for Customer Driven Podcast, Women in CX Leadership, and the voice and perspective and the incredible leadership that this industry has with the female executive, CX executive, is amazing. I was very challenged to figure out for the ladies and the female leadership that we wanted to bring on the show to how to whittle it down, because there is so many people doing great things. My goal with Women in CX Leadership series here was really to highlight the accomplishment and the successes that is taking place in the industry in that regard. I'm hoping that this will help inspire future generations of female leadership for our industry. I hope that this will be great advocacy for the number of good things that this industry represents, the CX industry as a whole, and how we're touching lives in so many different ways, not only in our one-to-one mentorship and sharing, but even with the customers and the end customer perspective. So let's get started. And Razia Richter, Razia, first of all, I'm going to have you introduce yourself here very, very quickly. But Razia, you are a gem. I mean, I got to know you, I don't know how many years ago was now, being involved with Execs in the Know, and everyone that knows you, Razia, I literally, I just cannot think anything negative. It's always about how inspiring you are, how much people enjoy you. They really feel like they get a lot whenever you do, how you do it. And I sincerely mean that. Razi, if I could clone you and package you in a bottle and put you out there, I would do that in a heartbeat for you. But anyhow, thank you, Razia. I know how busy you are. Let's take a minute just for our listeners quickly. You've got a great background, a great rich history here. Let's give our listeners a little bit of flavor to that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chad, for your kind words. And it has been just a fantastic experience being part of Executives in the Know, part of the board, and really networking and learning so much from you and the community. So thank you again, and thank you for this opportunity. So a little bit about my background. I have been blessed and so grateful that I actually had what I call a dream career with Petco. 26 years. I know that sounds like a long time and unheard of, most likely in today's world. 26 years of phenomenal career with Petco, the retailer. And my most recent role that I had with them before I left is I was their chief customer officer, and I reported directly into the CEO and was responsible for everything about the customer as it relates to creating a customer culture, implementing the NPS methodology, created a center of excellence that pulled together a 360 view of the customer, and then also everything around the call center management for the company. So really responsible and the customer advocate in the company around taking actions and turning insights into actions. And before I had that role, I had a tremendous opportunity to learn and grow in the company, and started off as their controller in the finance area, then went into merchandising and inventory, and then got the opportunity to actually work with the frontline teams in retail and ran stores for the company for several years. And that's where I really developed the passion and the love for really understanding customers, understanding how frontline is working with the customer, and how to best improve that customer experience. So I'm really grateful with the breadth and depth that I had with the company. And then prior to Petco, I was a CPA auditor with KPMG. So long, deep retail career for me on both sides of the equation, financial and operational. And it's just been a fantastic career. That helped me move into the role that I'm in today, which is independent consultant in the CX space, helping both brands and service providers around customer experience strategy, execution, and training. So my most favorite role of all at Petco really was my last one as the Chief Customer Officer.
Yeah, Razia, I don't remember the date of that exact. I mean, you have a well diverse background, and when the date of that actual chief customer officer role took place, but a little bit pioneering, because obviously what chief customer officer is today in most organizations has defined a lot more than it was maybe when you first started that. Maybe I'm incorrect, but you could share a little bit about that, because that was very new and emerging at the time, I believe. Am I correct, or would you
Yeah,
say it
it
a
was
little
about
differently?
7 years ago. And it's interesting because I was in operations at the time, and we were thinking about all the different things we needed to do to continue to shift from a retailer that was transactional to a retailer that focused more on the relationship building aspect of our service delivery. And NPS came around. I pilot tested it, and then ultimately our board and our executive team interviewed Fred Reichheld, I believe, and interviewed several people from Bain, and they said, we need to have a champion and a leader in the organization. And I was so lucky. Our CEO pretty much handpicked me and said, you've got an operating background, you have developed the trust across the organization, and you can be the person to help us really drive change and drive this culture towards more of that customer advocacy experience. So I was delighted and had a great opportunity. So yeah, it was at the beginning stages of chief customer officer. We did not have one in the company, and there weren't a lot of companies that had that role at that time. Unlike today, it's very much grown. It's a very critical role, and I'm glad to see so many C-suite teams actually having a chief customer officer on them today.
Well, kudos to you and the organization with the insight, the vision. I think this was back in 2012-ish or whatever that time frame was.
Yep.
The chief customer officer of 2018's got it made in the shade compared to you back in the day. Now I'm just having some fun there. Always evolving, always changing, always an uphill hill to climb. That's for sure. So one thing I do know, let's dive in, Razia, is that in any organization, I'm a absolute believer and seen it firsthand with so many of the brands we've interacted with over the years. It really comes down to leadership and philosophy of leadership. And you, as a female CX executive in our industry, which we treasure, what is your sort of, when I say view on leadership, what advice, what recommendations, suggestions would you really want to give the listeners, some thoughts, some ideas, and some takeaways when you think of leadership?
Yeah, so I think I would break it up into really two areas. One is, what are some of the competencies that I think the leaders in the CX space need to continue to focus on and develop? And then the other are on some basic leadership philosophy. So I'll start off on the CX competencies, Chad. So I would say, to sum it up, there's really three areas that I think are really important as you're beginning in your career there or throughout, is to really go in with a mindset of you want to be a fast learner. And it's really important for you to learn about the front of the house of your operations, as well as the back end of your operations, and to constantly be bringing into your learning process and teaching others around your customer and your employee. Having a mindset and constantly being the advocate in your organization, teaching others about how important it is really critical. The second area I would say is a strong communicator. So really developing those skills to be a good listener. And I found that in the last 3 to 4 years, you really became the storyteller in the organization, or you're influencing others to be part of your storytelling team. And what I mean by being a good communicator is really knowing your audience, using positive tones, eye contact, body language. But I always found it super helpful to recap what I wanted my audience to remember, and also, to make it meaningful for them, to make it so that they could actually take some of your nuggets and relate to them based on where they were in the organization and what they were responsible for. So strong communication, some of the things that I did in the organization is whenever people were talking about developing promoters, whether it was someone in the communications department, or it was the CEO, or it was an article that was being written in the company's internal communications, is I always used the terms of how do you build promoters? What does a promoter mean to a particular individual business unit or a particular individual store? So strong communication is key. And then the third area, which is huge for this role, is to be a strong influencer. And you end up moving and pushing pain points, solutions across the organization. You're not the CEO, but at times you almost have to have that much influence across the organization. So I think developing that influence without authority skill is huge. And I've focused on the concept of building a sponsorship spine. And you can do that in a formal and an informal way. So the formal ways that I did it, I had some good success with really two tools. One was called the accelerated implementation methodology. And it really focuses on how do you move an organization through change. The other is around Agile Project Management methods. And really what those two taught me to do was to really clearly find out who were the individuals that I really needed to have as part of my sponsorship spine, and have one-on-one conversations with them periodically to help them understand their role, help them execute the role, and then also clearly define some metrics that were important to their organization, as well as important to the organization as a whole. So developing that sponsorship spine, keeping it healthy, keeping it moving throughout your initiatives are really, really key. And then the area that I would say on that sponsorship spine, I spent a lot of time learning, practicing, is how do you create an ROI, particularly for your CX initiatives? And you don't have to be a CPA, you don't have to be in the finance department, but it was really important to have on my sponsorship spine someone who was from finance that could be the person to help bring light to the ROI and help me get adoption for those initiatives. So getting that finance department individuals involved early on really does pay off. So those are some of the key competency areas for CX that I think there are many that you want to develop, but those are the three that I think helped me succeed the most as I progressed in the organization.
So if I could just say in summary, Razia, some of this fast learner, and a lot of times I've heard about learn quickly or fail fast, learn fast, but learn. also the strong influence without authority, strong communicator, and then you've talked a lot about the ROI piece and partnering with finance. I'm sure there's others I've missed in there, but great insight there. Would there be anything else you just would want to reinforce from your own experiences when your view of leadership in summary?
I think the key is to find those nuggets, those stories that have emotion in them, and share them throughout the organization. And I also feel like going in with the attitude that most people come to work every day wanting to do the right thing, and some people do some just amazing things with the customer. And by broadcasting those and sharing those stories, it really makes it more real, and it allows you to remember it and keep it top of mind. It helps you to articulate what good looks like. So storytelling is huge.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for it. And then the manager versus leader versus mentor philosophy.
Yeah, so this really has been the core of my growth as a leader. And I've had a couple of amazing folks that I've been able to work with, mentor, coach me. And I really think that by understanding how one moves through the different stages of leadership, the roles is really important. So the way I would put it is, leaders are those folks that really do inspire. They're the ones that are focused on setting the vision, coaching, explaining the whys. And managers focus more on directing the day to day, setting goals, focusing on the what. And I think that as you move through your career, there becomes a point in time where you definitely want to begin to shift from that management, telling people what to do, to actually setting the vision and then supporting them and helping them accomplish, goals and goals for your broader team and goals for the company. And the other thing I would point out is uh, it was probably midway into my career where I realized this is I tended to be someone who loved to train, who loved to, help people. And I realized that you can't do that day in and day out. There's a point in time where you're not just focused on managing the performance of someone, but you also want to take a look at the potential. And so the ability for you to take people in your organization, whether they're in your organization or they're in another, and instead of managing them for performance, you're really managing them for their potential. And that's what I think coaching and mentoring focuses on is the potential side of the equation. And I found that focusing on people's strengths was you got much more out of it long term, and it was way better than trying to focus on people's weaknesses. So that I would say was a key point of my leadership philosophy is finding the strengths in people, the passion that they had, and really supporting them and unleashing them to let them go forward. And I had a number of different examples in the company where once I made that shift as a leader, I was able to get many people promoted from manager to director to vice president of the company. And so that was a key turning point for me. And then finally, I would say get mentors throughout your career. I was blessed and super grateful to have some amazing mentors in the company and outside of the company. And they helped me so much in terms of helping me to reach my potential, helping me at times when I may not have had the confidence that I needed to have in myself, but they had more confidence in me. So they pushed me to try new things, go into new areas in the company. And when I talk about mentors, I think what's really important is try to find mentors that are not in your area of expertise. So in my case, when I first started off with a mentor, I was in the finance accounting area, and the mentor that I had was the leader in the operations part of the company. And I learned so much from him. And in fact, I ended up deciding, okay, I don't want to go down the path of becoming the CFO of the company. I want to move into operations and have a different impact in the organization. And so having mentors throughout my career were really, really critical. So I highly encourage you to do that. Some companies have formal, informal. For me, what worked the best was an informal process. And midway into my career, I got so much out of it that I ended up being a mentor to a number of different leaders in the company. And to this day, even after leaving the company, I'm still in contact with those individuals and helping them to continue to, move their career forward. Having a mentor has someone in the company that can be a really good sounding block for you, that can help you stay humble, I would say, as a leader.
Razia, very well said, and a lot of excellent points. And with the little bit of time we have left, I've got a couple of key other questions I want to quickly get into for us
Sure.
here. And my whole goal with this particular episode of Women in CX Leadership is to really inspire not only in goodwill of advocacy of what our industry represents and what it stands for, but the tremendous opportunity that I think exists for all facets of opportunity in people in this space. So I'm hoping that with your leadership successes, that's going to help some of the folks there listening to this. But one of the things I also know is I'd love to learn about what leaders read. And what I've always taken notes when I've met some very impressive people over my time. What do they read? Because I think it's fascinating. You can learn so much about not only that person, but learn an incredible amount of just insight by that. So my question to you is, Razia, what books or other literature has inspired you personally, influenced you, and why?
Sure, absolutely. Because I was in the early pioneering stages, as we could call it, as part of the chief customer officer role, I ended up using a lot of tools and resources. But there are three books that literally are in my office, and they've got highlights, notes throughout the pages. The first one was it's the Ultimate Question 2.0 by Fred Reichheld and Rob Markey. And that particular book really helped me tremendously as I was implementing NPS for the organization. And I ended up implementing it for our store group and then ended up implementing it across the whole company. But it really did a great job on putting together, laying out the NPS foundation, some excellent case studies, and then some advice from some seasoned executives. And then ultimately, I joined the NPS Forum. For 5 years, I was on it, and I had an opportunity to learn directly from some amazing CX leaders from Apple, from Vanguard, American Express. It was a great opportunity. The second one is the Chief Customer Officer 2.0 by Jeannie Bliss. And I liked that one a lot. Again, early stage in my career as the Chief Customer Officer, gave me some great nuggets on defining this new role that I was in and helping me to explain it and define it across our organization, and also helping me identify those core competencies that I talked about earlier, that I constantly focused on developing. It also helped to lay out how I can focus on aligning my leadership team on the most important things we needed to move forward with in the customer journey. And then the third one that I got my hands on later on into the career is Outside In by Harley Manning and Carrie Bodine. And I think that one, what I love, there's a page, again, that I reference all the time. They have a diagram in the book that helps you to identify the players of your customer ecosystem and really helps you to position and align your strategies to focus on the customer, and most importantly, to focus on the employees that interact directly with the customer. So the support departments in the organization end up being kind of in the middle of that circle, but the main focus is what are the different customer touch points that your customers are going through, and how are those frontline people getting supported, and are we making sure that their tools and the barriers are being removed. So I really, really liked it. Second thing that I got out of that book was they did a really good job, in my opinion, on connecting the dots on measuring your CX initiatives so that you could have the greatest success in getting them adopted. And it was very helpful for me in getting a number of large investments adopted within the organization I was in. It really brought together outcome-based metrics as well as financial metrics, so that you could get your CX initiatives adopted. So those were three that were major impact for me. And of course, the podcasts in the CX space, Executives in the Know, the CRS Summit conferences were huge, Chad. I took back, pages and pages of notes, and some of the case studies and examples that were shared at those conferences gave me great ideas that I was able to bring back to Petco to implement changes within the organization focused on the customer initiatives.
Well, those are great examples, and I'll make sure I include those in the show notes for the listeners. So we'll have those defined. And of course, I'm a huge fan and advocate of the Customer Response Summit. If you've never been to one of our leadership events, we host them twice a year and welcome all of our listeners. Come out, be part of it. It's a fantastic 2.5 days of insightful conversations. So just with the couple of minutes we have left, Razia, the last question I'm just going to ask you is, what is the main message? I know this is a very broad question. It's going to be hard to answer in the time we have, but what is the main message you want the listeners and audience leadership to learn, inspire, and take away from your session?
Yeah, so that is a hard one, Chad, but I will do my best to try to be succinct on it. And I would say I learned from my mentors and had the opportunity to work with an executive coach during my career. And the big thing that came out of that was really focusing on the fact that, relationship building is key. It's really key no matter what role you're in an organization, but it becomes even more critical when you're in that chief customer advocate role. And building relationships with your mentors, your peers, your team members. And I'll never forget, constantly in the back of my mind was, it's better to have a relationship than to be right. And that will keep you humble, but yet keep you confident. And finding ways in which you work across the organization, you find out what are other individuals' goals, what are things that they need to win on, and working together, you can achieve greatness. You really can't do it on your own. And once you can realize that and truly live your day-to-day leadership practices around it, I think it's huge. I moved in the organization every 3 years, new team, new role. It really did help me to broaden my skill set, but really focusing on that relationship building was really, really key. And then my second one is I never take no for the answer. And people that have worked with me will realize that. And what I mean by that is when you're passionate about something, when you believe it's the right thing for your organization, for the employees, for the customer, never give up on that passion. One example I share with you is after pitching a CX initiative that I believed was the right thing for the company. I think I went through three CFOs, sorry. And after I got to the third one, I finally got it adopted. And I had to really look inside and say, maybe it was timing. Perhaps I didn't have the right information. I didn't have a strong enough ROI case, but I never gave up on it. And ultimately it did get adopted. So my advice to you is if you believe strongly in something, it might be a matter of timing. It might be a matter of you needing more information, but don't give up on it.
That's very well said, and it's a tough question, and thank you for that. I know how hard it is to answer questions such as that. But Razia, you've been a tremendous guest. I want to say thank you. And for our listeners today, if you'd like to get in touch with Razia or want just to something inspired you about her leadership and her success in this industry and tremendous background, feel free to reach out to me, Chad at execsintheknow.com. I'd be happy to try to put you in touch with Razia. Razia, I've always said to you, you should write a book someday and in your free time. But, there is a lot bottled up there that I think you could really help advance and elevate the leadership in this industry as a whole. So,
right.
With that, I want to say thank you again. I'll make sure I put the show notes together. If you haven't subscribed to Customer Driven Podcast with Chad McDaniel, I would encourage you to do that. If you want to get involved and be featured on the podcast, you've got a great story, great leadership examples, reach out to me. I'd love to hear. There's so many good, positive things going on in our industry that I just really want to help advocate out there to our universe of execs in the know. So on behalf of myself, myself, Chad McDaniel, Razia Richter, thank you so much. You're an absolute dynamite leader. I respect you greatly and appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone.